Hello everyone, I hope your week is going well. Today's video is Jerry Marzinsky speaking into the workings of psychiatric issues. I've had extensive experience with this hands-on. After my years of working in industry, I went into security, and 11 years of this security duty was very often posted to observe and ensure safety for psychiatric patients. I have likely logged 1,000 hours or more of either maintaining a safe environment for the patient or speaking with them. And I didn't mind speaking with them. That's my nature. I'm caring. I like to help people. So I often had conversations if they wanted to. And I was very careful that I didn't do anything unethical. Like I didn't lead them or anything like that. I just talked to them and, bounce words back and forth, things like that. And many of them were in an alternate reality, which at the time I didn't realize. Now I see that there are many alternate realities and potential avatar shifts. And there are many flavors of issues. I watched one fellow who was, I would say, approximately 40, maybe 5'10", and kind of beefy, like 200 pounds, maybe 210 pounds. And he had like a devil complex. He thought he was the devil. And I tried to just talk with him and keep things mellow. And he was almost like a snarling watchdog. Like he was just his energy was very aggressive and offensive. And I just, okay, you just have to stay here for a while. We're going to have somebody talk with you. And so it got to the point where it escalated. And the police were called, and we had a police officer show up, and then another security officer. So it was three of us. And the police officer said, "Hey, I'm going to go into your room, and I'm going to talk to you." And he got pretty much went into like watchdog, angry, attack dog mode. So the three of us ended up in a kind of a control wrestling match with this guy. We got onto the floor, and his strength was unbelievable. I mean, it was just, we did everything we could to control him. We got banged up a little bit, but we survived. And eventually the psychiatrist got there and they started working things out, and he was moved to another facility in an ambulance, and they had to strap him to the gurney so he wouldn't be fighting or anything. So I've dealt with many issues like that. I've been in physical conflicts, knocked to the floor, temporarily knocked out in one conflict. It was difficult, but it was just part of the job. And at the end of the day, like, how it is, especially in the United States, if anybody assaults anybody or attacks anybody, it's an instant like lawsuit and blah, blah. All those attacks on me, I just wrote it off as, hey, it's just part of the job, and I'm just trying to help this person best I can, keep them safe. And looking at the other side of the coin, thank God it never happened on my watch, but in my 11 years on various psych watches, and we had perhaps 10 security officers watching, various patients from time to time, we had about, I would say, one successful unalive about every year and a half, 2 years over that time period, where either the security wasn't keeping a close enough eye, or the person was just bent on getting it done and there was nothing that was going to stop it. But like I said, thankfully it was never on my watch. So it's pretty intense. I had one call where I was called to watch a girl. She was early 20s, mid 20s, fairly slim, average size, 5'5", and wearing like tight clothes. And I thought, well, I got a relatively easy watch here. I'm not watching some like maniac guy, especially if he was on accelerants or different issues like that. And the nurse said, she has some mental issues, and, keep an eye on her, make sure she's safe. And I'm like, okay. As we had a conversation, things started rolling. She had like this cat thing where she thought she was a cat, like a full-size, I don't know, cheetah or lion or whatever. She really thought she was a cat. I let her be, I kept my distance because of course, ethics. Don't get close, especially to a woman. Just keep your distance. And she started walking around the room and picking at like electrical outlets and things like that. And I said, okay, this is a safety issue here. She cannot go near that. So I said, no, don't touch the electrical outlet. And she looked at me like, are you really trying to tell me not to do something? So she stopped doing that and she went to another section. She found some loose apparatus. I can't remember if it was like some medical equipment that was potentially very dangerous. Even a weapon, it could even be a weapon or used on herself. So I said, no, don't touch that. And she looked at me again like, seriously, are you really trying to tell me not to touch that? So then I went up to her, I said, put that down. You can't be holding, and then it just, all hell broke loose at that point. I had this cat jump on me, and then all kinds of people went in there, and there was a restraint and all that stuff. So I've been through quite a bit. So I find this interesting. And it's a 4-minute clip here. Jerry Marzinsky speaking about the topic of hallucinations, voices, what are they, what's being done. And I hope you enjoy it. Have a good week, everyone.
What I'd like to start out with is that schizophrenia is not what the psychiatric mafia and the universities are telling you it is. I've been studying the voices that schizophrenics hear for, close to over 4 decades. Okay, I've interviewed hundreds of schizophrenics, and one of the things that the psychiatric mafia doesn't do, and Big Pharma doesn't do, is to ask patients about their voices. There's 23 different consistent patterns that these voices run. And if they run patterns, they can't be hallucinations. Hallucinations are random. They're all over the place. They're positive, negative, neutral. They're all over the place. Psychiatrists, psychologists, they just ignore the voices. They're taught in graduate school and medical school that they're hallucinations, and they just believe it. They don't check it out for themselves. Here was the first pattern that I saw. It was a pattern of consistent negativity. They didn't say anything good. So my question was, what holds them on such a negative pattern? Why are they held to that pattern? How come they're not random like all other hallucinations? How come they don't say good stuff sometime and mediocre stuff sometime? Why is it consistently negative, right? And then what holds them on that negative course? How come they are not random? First question I saw. Second question I saw is that one patient came to me one day and he said, when the voices come, I start praying the 23rd Psalm. He said, the voices react like worms thrown on a hot frying pan. All right? So I went, well, that's odd. So I never believed anything just one guy said. So I had access to scores of schizophrenics. So I started asking them, what happens when you pray? And they would tell me the voices don't like it. So I started passing out the 23rd Psalm, and I'd ask them, pray this when the voices come. And I'd ask them, what happened? They said the voices went nuts. They didn't like the 23rd Psalm. They didn't like Psalm 91. They didn't like the patient reading the Bible. They didn't like them going to church. And this was, after scores of them have been interviewed. Up to this point now, I've talked to hundreds of them. All of them had virtually the same reaction. The voices didn't like religion. They didn't like preachers. They didn't like God. They didn't like Jesus. My next question was, why would a hallucination be anti-religious? Why would a hallucination hate God, not want the person to go to church, not read the Bible, not move down any kind of spiritual path? That didn't make any sense. And this was consistent. The third pattern I saw was that after the voices hit these people, their energy level dropped to almost nothing. And there was a one-to-one correlation between that, the voices showing up, and their energy level dropping to nothing. So I started asking them, you know, when the voices come, after they leave, do you feel that your energy levels drop down to nothing? And they go, yeah. And I would ask them, well, you know, what do you think caused that? They go, I don't know. You know, they had no idea. And that scores of them, they'd say, I don't know. And most of them didn't even notice it. They just knew they felt bad. Okay. And so I started asking them what the voices were telling them. And one of them went to one of the psychiatrists at the state hospital and told him that I was asking him about his voices and he didn't like it. All right. That next morning I got called up to the psychiatrist's office and ordered to stop asking them questions about their voices. The psychiatrist told me they're hallucinations. You know, by asking them questions about their voices, you're reinforcing the hallucinations and making them worse. You know, I knew that was bullcrap at the time, but you can't tell these guys anything. You can't stand up to them. They run the mental health system pretty much. And I was ordered to stop doing that. So I had to be more careful. I got caught again later, a few years later. I had to really slow down. And again, I was warned by another psychiatrist, don't ask them questions about their voices. So it's like, why doesn't psychiatry want to know about the voices? It's the main symptom of schizophrenia. Why are they ignoring it? Why are they just blowing it off like it's nothing? They have done no research into the voices at all. Zero. They have nothing to stand on except their crazy proclamation that the voices are hallucinations. Right? They're not.